If you don't end your deficit, your body will. Weight loss is a biological adaptation that our bodies undertake when they're faced with a significant and sustained calorie deficit. Why? Because the amount of calories you burn in a day relates heavily to your mass, no pun intended. Now, we're not talking about the difference between losing fat versus lean tissue yet. We're just talking about weight. You will lose weight in a calorie deficit because your body wants to burn fewer calories so that it can create an equilibrium with its new food supply. And it will try to do this even if you have plentiful fat stores a lot of the time. Why? Because, hey, it's like if you lose your job all of a sudden and you're living off your savings, wouldn't you maybe get rid of some unnecessary expenditures just to make your savings last that much longer? Your brain's thinking the same thing. That's why, even though people have dozens or hundreds of pounds of fat available on their frame, the body will still choose to reduce lean tissue if that person's not careful. I won't get into that in this, but it's an important topic, how to preserve lean mass when you're in a calorie deficit. So if you go into, let's say, a 750 calorie deficit, after 12 weeks, you're not in a 750 calorie deficit. Your body weight has gone down, hopefully, right? It's a significant deficit. The weight loss math nerds would tell you that's about 1.5 pounds a week of fat if you're losing fat. But let's say you're just losing 2 pounds a week and 3/4 of it is fat and 1/4 of that is lean mass, which is actually a pretty good ratio. It's normal to lose a little bit of lean mass as you're losing fat. So you lose 2 pounds a week for 12 weeks. Well, now you're 24 pounds lighter. And if you were 240 pounds when you started, now you're 216. So you're not going to burn as many calories at rest. And you're not going to necessarily burn as many calories while you're exercising, especially if that exercise is done under your body weight. If you're riding an exercise bike, probably not a huge difference in the caloric expenditure. But if you're running, yeah, that's going to be a considerable difference. And it's going to affect the calories you burn while walking as well. Now, oftentimes these can be made up for by improvements in fitness that come because of weight loss. There's a yin and yang to all things. But it's quite possible that after 12 weeks of sustained dieting, caloric restriction, I should say, you're no longer in a 750 calorie deficit. By the end of that 12 weeks, your deficit might only be 450 calories or 350 calories. And that's why that person was steadily losing 2.5 pounds per week at the beginning. By the end, they might only be losing 1.5 pounds a week. And that will continue to dwindle until it's 0 pounds a week. And the body has just acclimatized completely to 750 fewer calories a day on average. The body's kind of amazing like that. And it will ruin your diet. However, it's doing it using the mechanism that gets the weight off in the first place. So just remember that weight loss is absolutely possible, but you have to end it. You have to have an exit strategy, or your body will end it for you. And that's going to be a punishing experience, especially if you're fighting that and you still want to keep losing weight at the same rate. It's going to be very hard to do that for months and months. So yeah, when you go into a calorie deficit, it's good to have an exit strategy. It's good to have a rough idea of, okay, here's the minimum amount of time I probably want to be in this deficit, and here's probably the maximum amount of time. And then check in with your body, check in with the scale, check in with your coach, check in with me, or if your doctor is overseeing your weight loss, right? And make the smartest decision you possibly can. And then we come out of that deficit, we go to maintenance. And obviously, maintenance at 240 is probably going to be a little bit higher than maintenance at 216. But now we find our maintenance at 216. And just by playing around, watching the scale, going to gain 4 or 5 pounds of water weight as we come out of a caloric deficit. So, weight hangs out around 220, 221. You basically haven't gained any fat. And your maintenance calories is 3,200 calories a day instead of 3,400. And taking that opportunity to take a maintenance break is really helpful because this is when you're learning how to maintain weight that you've lost long term. And the longer you spend in a maintenance period, the better, because you have put your body through a stressful situation. And depending on the person, this can be super stressful or mildly stressful. And really depends on the person how much time they need to take. But a rule of thumb I've heard from Dr. Mike Israetel from Renaissance Periodization, he talks about doing half to 2/3 of the time that you were in a calorie deficit. So he takes this very seriously, and his recommendations are pretty extreme. So if you were in a 12-week deficit, he would say take a break at maintenance for at least 6 weeks. Interesting. I think a lot of the people he's talking to are strength athletes, physique athletes, bodybuilders, weightlifters. I've heard him talk about this in the context of extreme weight issues. And he spoke about it in the same terms. It's just saying, like, well, if you're 500 pounds, lose 50 pounds, stop after about 10%, take that time, whatever long it took, take that time, half of that in maintenance, and then go into another calorie deficit. And he's like, listen, yeah, it seems like it's going to take this long time, but really, you're not in a caloric deficit that whole time, which means you're just living life and you're going through periods of losing and then maintaining and then losing and then maintaining. And the alternative a lot of the time is to just end up hitting a plateau, grinding yourself to a halt, and then quit. Whereas this way, it's a little bit slower. It takes a bit more patience, but you are more likely to arrive at your goal weight feeling healthy, happy, bright eyed, bushy tailed, and prepared through at least one or two or three, maybe maintenance periods that you did at various like little terraces along the way, the little self imposed plateau that you created through maintenance.
And I've come back after editing just to make sure that I'm clear here that you don't have to do this. This is a very smart man's recommendation, but it's one recommendation. If you're very, very heavy, there is a sense of urgency. And once you're making progress, you don't want to stop. Really, just realize that breaks are a great idea. And keep in mind that, yeah, you just want to be in the driver's seat of your weight loss and not feel like you're just putting so much stress on your body and driving it so hard that eventually the wheels fall off. That's ultimately the goal. And however you do that, that's totally up to you.
So we know that there's a beginning and an end to a caloric deficit. And the more that we plan the end of the caloric deficit and the more we understand what we want to see before we end the deficit, like, all right, if I'm losing 3 pounds a day at the beginning, I'm a big guy, right? So if I'm losing 3 pounds a day, I might continue going until I'm down to about 1.5 pounds on average a week. And if I start to feel crappy, my sleep starts to go, and I'm on point with my nutrition, meaning I'm getting my recommended daily allowance of my vitamins and minerals. I'm just in a calorie deficit doing so. If I'm ticking all my boxes, if I'm managing my stress, and I've just been in this diet for quite a while and it's grinding to a halt, okay, right? I stuck it out for at least the last 2 weeks. I'm like, is there a whoosh? Is there a whoosh? Is there a whoosh? No, this is just slowly grinding to a halt. Okay. And then I come out of the deficit. I go to maintenance, or what I estimate my maintenance to be, watch the scale. If the scale goes too high, drop the calories a little bit. If I'm still ravenously hungry and the scale is not going up at all, then raise the calories a little bit. So you can just adjust until you find that maintenance.